folks. Welcome to another edition of the Omnist Hour. Before we launch into it, some business matters to take care of. We're working on bringing on Brandon as an occasional guest. You may have heard his voice in the last show. Very, very good soul friend from Australia who has had a somewhat parallel but different path than me. And we'll be able to share some different perspectives, topics that we like to talk about. And so sometimes he'll select a topic, sometimes I will, and we'll kind of do the old interview sketch. If you're familiar with Monty Python, you know kind of how that works. And Brandon is another person who has some great acting and singing and comedic chops. So these dual sessions should be pretty entertaining. At any rate, the title of today's discussion is Lima is not the capital of Peru. The truth about Elon Musk. So let's get into it. Okay, background issues. I did take this background from an outfit called Lithium Art, which I found very interesting when I was looking for some tie-in to today's topic. And you'll see when we get into it. Let me get the music a little bit lower so it's not quite so annoying. Okay, so let's dig into it. LiMa, L-I-M-A. L-I, if you're not aware of what those initials stand for, they are the chemical symbol for lithium. And Ma, as you all know, is almost universally what we call mothers. So I'm going to spend this time telling you who LiMa really was, where LiMa really originated, and tying it into some of the other stories that I've been sharing with you of our hidden past. Okay, let's launch into it. As you may be aware, if you've followed my material for any length of time, my premise, my faith, my knowledge is that creation has been going on for a long time. And all of physical creation has been a struggle between two primordial teams. One led by the giver of free will, the giver of his image, original image, as a level 0 free-range consciousness with the ability to think and explore and decide for itself what their truth is, what truth they want to embrace from what they see around them. And this is why we now have reincarnation and karma, so we can see different perspectives and learn different truths through more than one life, through more than one soul vessel, which is going to provide us a very different experience. And as you may remember if you follow me, that the human form is not the only soul vessel out there. In fact, the human vessel is an oversoul vessel. You are not your body, but you're the leader of it. And you don't reside within your body, you reside without it, sort of attached like a shadow, if you will. And there are other souls within your body that perform that same function for your head, your brain, your heart, your lungs, even individual cells and individual molecules and atoms within those cells, etc., etc. This is the truth of the as above, so below belief that crosses pretty much all religions and all spiritualities. That there's something that is linking us to what's going on in the spiritual world and kind of keeping the spiritual and physical worlds in sync. So let me tell you where lithium fits in all this. Now, if you know anything about the elements, you would know that lithium is, let me just confirm this because I just had to look it up again. Yes, of course. Lithium is element number 3. Number 3 in the periodic table. Now, what's the significance of that? Okay, let me tell you. The first element was hydrogen. And hydrogen, as anybody who knows about the properties of hydrogen, is an incredibly useful element. It is the material that stars start out with burning until they run out of it and have to fuse other materials to make bigger things, unless they go supernova. A lot of things can happen with that. Element number 2 is helium, which interestingly enough is one of the most inert gases out there. Has this very funny side effect of making us talk really high, which we love to do with our kids at birthday parties. But we don't fill them full of hydrogen, which is even lighter, or lithium, which is light too, but has a lot of bad characteristics. Which, if you're aware of the history of mental health treatment, you would know that a few decades ago, giving people lithium was a way to treat what they called manic depression. Interesting tidbit, which I welcome you to investigate and see how all this is tied together. Okay, so lithium, in the scheme of things, these early elements were basically a series of weapons and counter weapons developed by the Borg anti-god minion, his demiurge of his universe, versus the counter inventions of the real god and his allies, who were the ones championing the male demiurge universe. The universe that was designed to do creation responsibly and not weaponize everything that was created. Okay, so you ask, well, how did this all happen? Well, okay, the God team was the one that invented protons. And the Borg team invented antiprotons, of course. That was almost a given, because everything that they do in their universe, which is quite complex now, so you can't really see it in action, but was simple then, is an equal and opposite countermeasure. Okay, so then I invented the anti-electron. And then they invented the electron, which gave them, incidentally, the solution of making hydrogen. Hydrogen was originally a Borg creation. It was accidental. They did it as retaliation and had no idea what they were doing in the process, but actually created the fuel for stars so that these two primordial universes might have something to explode with. Because before the Big Bang, there were two universes that hadn't figured out a reason to grow. They were just like two souls stuck together in a strange new physical reality that they didn't understand. Okay, so now we get past how the Big Bang happened and how all the violence of it was not God's fault, but was actually the fault of anti-gods and their minions. And showing you just how stupid Borg and her minions are. No matter what they do, It turns out that it's something that God and his team already thought of and didn't want to implement themselves because they knew how many side effects it would have, and they didn't want that karma on their souls. This is smart creation. Okay, so then after we had hydrogen and all the fun of creating stars that were based on hydrogen was exhausted and these stars were started running out of fuel, ideas had to be put into place for what happens then. The scientists of the day were thinking about, well, we've never encountered a situation like this before. We've had theories about it, but we better go out and measure what's happening on many different kinds of stars. And this is the quantum theory of the early universe. If you know anything about quantum theory, you know that the main premise is that it doesn't seem like anything follows the laws we think it does until we observe it the right way, which is why you can observe light some ways and it looks like a wave, and some ways and it looks like a particle. Get your physicists over here and let them listen to me and tell me that I'm wrong and I'm blowing smoke up their ass as some spiritual moron. A lot of the New Age spirituality tribe, unfortunately, are. Okay, so then we get to lithium, which, as I told you, they're working back and forth. When we ran out of helium to burn, and it started becoming realized that helium was actually a pretty useful thing because it was so inert, because it didn't react with things. It would float around, observing, giving feedback without causing the karma of interacting with things. A very godly element. Unfortunately, when all the helium burned out of stars, then they had to invent what happened next. And that's when Borg took over and got people all upset about, well, look what's happened with this helium shit. We got to get past this to something better because it's not doing anything. It's not helping our team. And they got a lot of converts from God's team who they tricked into believing that lie. Oh no, this is going to shut down creation. We're not going to be able to expand anymore. Oh, the sky is falling. Chicken Little, Chicken Little. And you've run across physicists that are like that still want to find some way to collapse the universe or to make it settle out into some never-ending stable state that just goes on into second law of thermodynamics oblivion forever. These folks are crazy. They're being used and abused, mind-controlled by Borg. At any rate, lithium came into existence. And it is, if you know much about its properties, a more dangerous element than hydrogen. It's very difficult. It's so reactive with things that it's very difficult to find anywhere close to its natural state that can be extracted, unlike hydrogen, which, when you bond it with oxygen, becomes water. Another great invention of the God's team that sort of foiled the plan of Borg once oxygen was invented. Okay, so lithium is one of these bad stepchildren of the periodic table. And anyone who has worked in battery technology, who has worked in mental health drug technology for long enough, knows that. They no longer prescribe lithium, at least as far as I know, for mental illness. They no longer want to use lithium in batteries because it has so many bad properties, both from an end-use standpoint, a disposal standpoint, and a mining standpoint. And here's where we tie into the main subject of Elon Musk, which there's a lot of dispute and debate about today. And folks making him out to be, have you noticed in some of the anti-Musk rhetoric, spreading fear and uncertainty about what he's doing by making him look orange man bad, just like they doctored up videos and pictures of Trump to make his hair look more orange, to make him look, finding just the right pose to make him look like a crazy man. Tell me that they didn't. You can go back and look at it. You can go back in your own memes, your own tribe's memes, and see how they changed when it became apparent that he wasn't playing by the same rules as the establishment. And this is what they're doing to Musk now. Does that mean he's a white hat? Not necessarily. Any white hat that's not aware of what's going on at a deeper level spiritually can be turned. And any technology they develop can be dual use. But if you listen to Elon talking about his visions, talking about his humanity, talking about who he is and what his values are, you would come away with a very different impression than when you watch an asshole like Bezos or Gates or Fauci or Zuckerberg or talking about their billionaire vision, how they became successful, what their ambitions are for space, blah, 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 blah. Study these men and women and look at the difference of how they present themselves. Another good example, two good examples from the political sphere are Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris. Compare how they present themselves versus someone like Jill Stein, versus someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene on the right. You can tell who the real white hats are by where their hearts and their heads are aligned. Not one or the other. Because anybody that is only thinking from the heart or from the head or from any other organ that happens to be driving them is not letting their soul run their life and is subject to being assimilated by the dark side. So the jury is out on Elon, but everything that he said, everything that he's done, his efforts in improving battery technology are not all about making more money, making batteries cheaper, making them faster, making blah, 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 blah. He has serious concerns about materials and their environmental effects and their safety effects long term. Listen to it. The same thing with his ambitions with the new Pi phone that he's planning to introduce this year. Listen to the feature set, listen to him talk about it, and compare that with the crap you're hearing from Apple, the crap you're hearing from Samsung, the crap you're hearing from all the manufacturers in China. Xiaomi, show me something good I can get for cheap. And ask your Indian friends how their market has been inundated by Xiaomi. And now this company is trying to strong-arm their government by avoiding taxes, by subverting leaders, all kinds of stuff. They just managed to seize about, I think it was about don't quote me on this, but something like 250,000 or 750,000, no, billion assets of Xiaomi because they were illegally avoiding taxes and basically shipping money back to China through the black market, which happens a lot with the U.S. too, companies working in China or Chinese companies working in the U.S. by pretending that these payments were for something that was never delivered. So it's basically you ship a bunch of phones over, and then you ship a bunch of money back to China, claiming that these people did something to earn it in China, when in fact none of them did anything in India. They were just placeholders in India, bag holders, money men for an international criminal mafia, which is exactly what the Chinese Communist Party are, and the minions that support them in other countries, or who are fighting them, wanting their own Godfather team to win. And this is the truth about the global elite all over the world. If they are not representing their people in what they do, which most of them don't, they are a criminal mafia. This is why criminal mafias love revolution so much. They don't care whether it's a communist revolution or a fascist revolution or a nationalist revolution. They just want to destabilize your country enough so that the laws that protected the average citizen are completely destroyed, with some populist idea of a new future of the good people replacing your laws and your lifetime with good laws and good rule, a good party. You ever seen the communist salute? Wake up, people. Don't be so stupid. Give Elon Musk a chance. Okay, I think I'm going to make this one a short one because I think I really made a very convincing message there that you might want to listen to. And we're hoping to get Brandon on so we can kind of have a two opinion discussion about this, because he's still more of the mindset that maybe Elon Musk is a black cat in white disguise, which is a rat hole that many people are falling down, who are just so uncertain they're not willing to trust anybody, especially anybody that's got billions of dollars. The difference is this guy started with nothing. Not anything but a supportive mother, like most of these guys have. And he started in a country where he went from being the elite minority, although he was not part of it, he was poor growing up, to being the oppressed minority in South Africa. And if you know anything about the trajectory that that country has taken since Mandela ended apartheid, you can know that it has swung way, way, way bad the other way, to the point where, you know, any of the more light-colored South Africans are scared of the black South Africans because they've been invaded by woke cultural Marxism from the U.S. And there's a feeling of entitlement among the poor that says the government needs to give me everything, and if they don't, they riot. They steal it from anybody that looks like they have more than they do. And that's exactly what's happening in every other Western country right now, as cultural Marxism infiltrates it. In the US, in Australia, in Europe, in the UK. Look at it. In all the countries that are being subverted by China around the Pacific. Look at the Philippines, which just elected, after having a person that everybody hated because he was so pro-China. They've now suddenly elected this new populist that's even more pro-China than Duterte was. How stupid is that? They are handing their country to the Chinese Communist Party on a silver platter and handing away their freedoms. There are Chinese specialist posters that are being... ADV Podcast is a good one to watch today. They just did an expose on what happened in the Philippines and how the Chinese that had been flowing into the Philippines under Duterte were drug lords were prostitution lords, were gambling lords, who the people hated, and who mostly served an elite that didn't include the Philippine people. They were treating Philippine people like mules, like slaves, sex slaves. Far, far worse than anything the Philippines ever experienced when they were an American colony or under more of the American influence. So you bozos that think the U.S. is the problem need to wise up. The U.S. has evil elements who have been subverted by communists, who have been subverted by mind-controlling forces and are serving the dark side. But that doesn't mean America is the bad guy. Most Americans still remember what our country was founded about, still remember that a rule of God, a rule of God's law, created in an image of fairness, the real God, not an authoritarian micromanager that tells everybody what to do, when to do, and how to do it, but a God of free will, a God of balance, a God who makes power earned and makes it responsible for keeping that trust. Doesn't throw too much power into any one hand, knowing that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. This is true on earth and in heaven. If you believe in some authoritarian micromanager of the universe that's going to come riding in on their white horse to save you, either as an ET or as a heavenly host, you have been had. That's not how the real God works. And if you keep thinking that way at the end of this cycle, which is not much longer, we're in the short count now. What's a short count, Rob? Well, you ask, a long count is something like the Mayan calendar, which ended up with 2012 for something special. Or has certain dates in the Bible that are special ones, that are not quite so long counts. The 2012 date was the start of a very important short count, which is not what anybody was telling you it was, because they don't know the truth. It's not a count in sevens. It's not a count in nines that ends in 2030. It's a count in 12s. 2012